Everyone has a story to tell. We all have moments in life, both good and bad, that shape us into the people we become. The good times are great. Yeah, there's no doubting that, but it's the hard times in life that really test who we are. The older I've gotten, the more I've learned to embrace those hard times and use it as an opportunity to become a better man. At some point or another, everyone has a rock bottom in life. For me, it was July of 2018. I was laying in a hospital bed at 12:30 in the morning, staring into the ceiling thinking about what was next. I didn't know much at the time, but I did know it was going to be one hell of a journey coming back from that. Now, I'm not here to tell you a sob story. No, not at all, quite the opposite in fact. For this particular story in my life, this one I'd like to tell you is one of growth. After being in the hospital for 4 days, I was driving home with my mom and she asked if I was going to be okay. I remember having my head pressed against the window and saying, eventually. Laying in that hospital bed after what happened allowed me to think about my life, where I was at and where I wanted to go. I knew I would be okay, eventually, but I had to start a journey that was going to be a daily process. Now, I love Nashville, don't get me wrong. I've lived here for 6 years. It's honestly crazy to think about. It's home now. I've grown up between Tennessee and North Carolina my whole life, but that's the thing. As much as I love where I'm from, the world is a big place and I wanted to see it. I needed to see it. My next step was figuring out where I wanted to go, and in November of 2018 I did just that. I had an idea, a place in mind that planted itself in my head. At that point, there was no stopping it. The idea became a mission, a purpose. It became an adventure. All of the best things that have happened to me in life have come from when I stepped out of my comfort zone. This was going to be my first time out of the United States, and on top of that, I was traveling by myself. So I did my research over the next 6 months, jumped through the hoops I needed to. It wasn't easy. In fact, there were numerous times I could have gave up and called it quits, but I told myself that wasn't happening. With a lot of planning and persistence, help from a good friend and an open mind, the day finally came. I was going on my adventure.
So you have to, there's one of 12 reasons of why you can go to Cuba, and as long as you fall into those specific categories, you're eligible to go. The specific one I'm going for is support of the Cuban people.
My day started early. Running on about 5 hours of sleep and all the caffeine in the mid-state, I got myself to the airport and prepared myself for the journey ahead. By the time I got to my gate and boarded the plane, the sun started to peek over the Tennessee hills. As I looked out the window leaving home, ground speeding by faster and faster, and then slowly fading away, it all started to hit me. I truly feel that things happen to us in life for a reason, good and bad. After the worst year of my life, I challenged myself to get out of my comfort zone, and here I was going on this incredible adventure. At the end of the day, it was all worth it. I was alive. Then all of a sudden, just like that, I wasn't in Kansas anymore. As soon as I stepped off the plane, I had sensory overload. Everything around me was new, exciting, and far more different from anything I was used to, and I loved it. After making it through customs and transferring my money to the Cuban CUC, I found myself in the back of Omar's taxi. I was on the largest island in the Caribbean and it felt like it. It was tropical, hot, and I couldn't wait to get my hands on the famous Cuban cocktails I read so much about. It was about a 30-minute trip from the airport to where I was staying in Havana, which allowed the reality to set in that I actually made it. This island nation that had been shut off to Americans for decades, I found myself on, listening to Drake in the back of Omar's taxi. Life comes at you fast, they say. My head stayed on a swivel, taking everything in. I was like a dog in the middle of a field full of squirrels. Classic cars from the mid-50s were everywhere I looked, all of them in pristine condition. As I got closer and closer to the city, I started to feel my heart race faster. During the 6 months that led up to this trip, I had a spot in mind that I kept seeing myself stand at. It was at the tip of the harbor looking down the Malecon, a seawall that stretches 5 miles from La Habana Vieja to the Vedado neighborhood. I knew as soon as I got to my Casa Particular, that's where I was going to head. I traveled down the narrow streets of La Habana and was just a few minutes out from where I was staying in the central part of the city with my wonderful host family, Casa Particular de Yorkie y Monica. I got there, put down my bags, and headed to the spot I saw myself standing at and dreamed about for so long. I made it. I stood on my spot taking it all in, appreciated my journey there, and went to go get my drink while overlooking the Malecon. I can say definitively that the best drinks I've ever had in my life were in Cuba, and that's not a hyperbole. I planned my next move, which had to be exploring. No internet, no problem. I walked around this beautiful foreign city, discovering something new at every turn, not knowing what was next, and I wasn't disappointed. I barely took any pictures because everything was so amazing I couldn't even look away. As the sun started to slowly go down, so did my energy. It had been a long, emotional, but exciting day, and I wanted to get a good night's sleep to get an early start the next morning. As I listened to the sounds of the city, a smile stayed planted firmly on my face. Day one of my adventure was in the books. It took the most difficult time of my life to get me here, but I'm not bitter for that. As I said, things happen in life for a reason, good and bad. Take what life gives you and make the best of it.